Story 1: The Crying Girl. A few years ago, I went on a hiking trip with my brother in the mountains. We found a perfect spot to set up camp near a small stream. The day was peaceful, and we enjoyed fishing and exploring the area. As night fell, we built a fire and sat around, talking about everything and nothing. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of someone crying. It was faint at first, but then it grew louder, more desperate. I thought it might be an animal, but it sounded distinctly human. I nudged my brother awake, and we both listened in silence. The crying seemed to be coming from deeper in the woods. Despite our fear, we felt compelled to help whoever was out there. We grabbed our flashlights and cautiously followed the sound. As we walked, the crying seemed to move further away, leading us deeper into the forest. After what felt like hours, we came to a small clearing. The crying stopped abruptly, leaving us in an eerie silence. We shined our flashlights around but saw nothing. Just as we were about to turn back, we heard a voice whisper, "Help me!" Terrified, we ran back to our camp as fast as we could. We packed up immediately and left at first light. We never figured out who or what was crying in the woods that night, but the memory still haunts us both. Story 2: The Shadow Among the Trees. It was late autumn when my friends and I decided to go on a weekend camping trip in a remote forest. The leaves had turned brilliant shades of red and orange, and the air was crisp and cool. We set up camp in a secluded area and spent the day hiking and enjoying the beautiful scenery. As night fell, we gathered around the campfire, telling stories and roasting marshmallows. Around midnight, one of my friends went into the woods to relieve himself. He came back a few minutes later, looking pale and shaken. He said he saw a shadowy figure watching him from behind a tree. We laughed it off, thinking he was trying to scare us. But then we all saw it. A dark figure standing just beyond the reach of our firelight, barely visible among the trees. We called out, but there was no response. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching us. We tried to approach it, but it vanished into the darkness. We spent the rest of the night on edge, keeping the fire burning brightly and taking turns standing guard. At dawn, we packed up and left, unnerved by the experience. We never figured out what we saw that night, but none of us have been back to those woods since. Story 3: The Abandoned Bunker. During a summer camping trip, my friends and I discovered an old, abandoned bunker hidden deep in the forest. The entrance was partially covered by vines and moss, as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. Naturally, our curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to explore it. We pried open the rusted door and stepped inside, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. Our flashlights illuminated long, dark corridors lined with rusting metal and crumbling concrete. We found empty rooms filled with broken furniture and scattered papers. As we ventured deeper, we heard a distant clanging noise, like metal on metal. We followed the sound, growing more uneasy with each step. Finally, we reached a large room at the end of the corridor. The clanging stopped abruptly, and the room fell into an eerie silence. We shined our flashlights around, revealing old machinery and control panels. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us. Panic set in as we tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Then, we heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the shadows. We turned our flashlights towards the sound and saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at us. Terrified, we pushed and shoved at the door until it finally gave way. We ran out of the bunker and back to our campsite, not stopping until we were safely outside. We never went back to that part of the forest, and to this day, we have no idea what was in that bunker with us. Story 4: The Haunted Trail. I used to love hiking on a trail that wound through an old forest near my hometown. It was a peaceful place, filled with the sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves. One evening, I decided to go for a walk there, hoping to catch the sunset. As I walked, I felt a strange sense of unease, like I was being watched. I brushed it off and continued, but the feeling grew stronger. I quickened my pace, trying to shake the feeling. That's when I saw it, a figure standing in the middle of the trail ahead of me. It was a man, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, staring at me with hollow eyes. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. He didn't move, just stood there, blocking my path. I took a step back, and he started to walk towards me. I turned and ran, not daring to look back. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees whispering and swaying. I finally reached my car and drove home, my hands shaking. I never hiked that trail again, and I still wonder who or what that figure was. Story 5. The Creepy Campground. My family used to go camping every summer at a remote campground deep in the woods. It was a beautiful place, with a clear lake and tall, ancient trees. One summer, we arrived to find the campground almost empty, except for one other family. We set up our tents and spent the day swimming and exploring. That night, as we sat around the campfire, we heard strange noises coming from the woods. It sounded like footsteps and whispers, but when we shined our flashlights, there was nothing there. The other family seemed just as spooked and decided to leave early the next morning. We stayed, thinking it was just our imaginations, but the next night, the noises returned, louder and closer. My dad decided it was best to leave as well, and we packed up in a hurry. As we drove away, I glanced back and saw something that still chills me to this day. A figure standing at the edge of the woods, watching us leave. It was tall and shadowy, with glowing eyes. I never told my family what I saw, but I know that something was out there, and it didn't want us to stay.